I don't know if you remember that Ray, in his when he was being interviewed this morning, said that one of the great new trends of business, which he felt would have some wonderful implications for CSR, was there's a growing more women in business. So this session between sort of lunch and afternoon tea is a great evidence of that. But our next speaker is Janet Blake. She's responsible for CSR in BT Global Division. She's sharing with us a case study on BT's experience in embedding CSR. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Janet Blake.
Hi, everyone. You're going to see quite a marked change in style for this next session, because we've been talking a lot about the theory of CSR and some of the global influences and what's going on. Now I'm going to dip you right down into a very practitioner-level case study of BT, and that's not Bankers Trust, that's British Telecom. And what I want to do is show you how we've, over the last, I guess, 10-ish, 15 years, when we started out on our CSR journey, how we've really embedded it in the business and what that looks like in concrete action terms. Now, I'm going to take you through quite a lot of information at a reasonably fast pace, so please try and stay with me, because what it will do is give you a really sort of cradle-to-grave view of how we've done it, what's worked and what hasn't worked, and some of the lessons that you can learn from our experience. As Ken said, I'm actually responsible for CSR in the global part of BT, Global Services. I'm a relative newcomer to CSR, only been in it about 18 months or so, and I've come from a change, organisation change, behavioural change environment. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is how to make some of the mindset changes to behaviours in the organisation. Where I'd like to take you on this little journey is initially to have a very quick look at our market, our business, and our brand. So you've got just a basic idea of the kind of environment that we're working and operating within. Then I'm going to take you into our CSR strategy and priorities, give you a flavour of what we've set as our commitment. And then into the business benefits and the stakeholder value. I'm going to go into some detail there because I think this is where the rubber hits the road in terms of how you can articulate a business case into a company. I'm going to then talk a little bit about where we see our own journey going for the future, and what actions we're using to embed CSR in BT. And again, I'm going to take you into some degree of detail there with some very concrete examples. Then we'll look finally at reporting and measures, and a final quick summary at the very end of the critical success factors. So that's the path that I'm going to be following today. I'd like to start with our market, business and brand. And at the beginning of that, I want to show you just a few vital statistics of BT. We're one of the world's leading providers of telecom services, and that's everything through voice, data, internet, multimedia services. Globally, we provide networked IT services to international corporate companies. Now that's quite different to our UK business. We've got a total of 20 million customers overall, vast majority in the UK, and they tend to be residential as well as business customers, but globally we're only in the market for business customers, business corporates. So there's quite a difference in the different parts of our business. Our turnover last year was 18.6 billion UK pounds, and we have operations across 170 countries around the globe, and that's spanning 5 continents. And we've got around 102,000 employees, vast majority of those in the UK, but we are expanding very rapidly in the global marketplace, particularly through acquisition. We're buying up a number of organisations. In terms of our business strategy, and this is again just to give you a bit of environmental background, our previous history was around what you would know as a traditional telecoms environment. We were privatised in the mid-80s, and we have traditionally been in the sort of traditional voice data areas that you would expect of a telecoms organisation. But the big shift we're going through right now is the shift onto the lower right-hand box there, which we're calling New Wave. And this is really the broadband, mobility, information communications technology and global solutions areas. Now, the obvious massive change that that brings when you're trying to balance those two marketplaces is moving from a very product-orientated area on the top left into what is really a very service-orientated area, bottom right. As well as a lot of the technology change that that brings, it's a huge change for our business. And what we're having to do is to defend, if you like, on the left-hand corner, but grow very, very massively on the right-hand corner. And that's to take advantage of some of the statistics that David was telling us about earlier on in terms of global connectivity, because that is one huge change. To just give you a quick graphic on what that change really means, in our marketplace, our customers expect a joined-up world. And that means joining up all the different areas of their working and home lives through a variety of different medium. And that's an enormous change and an enormous pressure on a company like ours if we've got to stay ahead of the game. What I'd like to do is just show you now a very short video, which is quite fun, and it just gives you a flavour of the marketplace we're in, and most specifically, the kind of demands that we're facing from our key stakeholders, and those are our customers. What I'd like you to do while you're watching this, it's only about 3 minutes long, is just start to think about what CSR challenges and opportunities this marketplace brings.
The digital networked economy is the environment in which we all now live and work. It brings new challenges and opportunities for all types and sizes of organisation, bringing customers, citizens, suppliers and employees closer together, wherever in the world they might be. BT's network perspective helps organisations thrive within this environment by recognising that the most successful and competitive companies will be those with the most effective networks, not just in terms of infrastructure, but also in terms of partners, suppliers and employees. BT understands that managing complex customer demands requires a simple, integrated solution.
Visa's mission is to become the way the world pays. We are an essential part of the global digital networked economy in enabling consumers to use cards to pay for services or to get cash from ATMs wherever they are. We have moved all of our network connections to BT using their global IP infrastructure. And I think our decision to go with BT has been vindicated. We need to provide first-class service to our members. And when they issue a card or when they acquire a merchant, they have to know that they can depend on Visa to deliver those transactions. So the reliability, the security of the network is a fundamental building stone for the quality of our brand.
BT is helping organisations to transform into more agile organisations, providing great customer service and performance.
We've moved the performance of the authority up dramatically from a very poor rating to a good rating, knocking on the door of excellent. We've also massively reduced the cost base of the business, taking £120 million out over 5 years. Headcount's down from 23,500 to 19,000. But overall, this is now a high-performing quality business that's delivering a quality of service to our customers that wasn't the case in the past.
BT has delivered tremendous added value for the Council through the collaborative working that we've done, through the innovation that's been brought to bear on problem solving locally. And I think that's enabled a genuine transformation to take place in a number of the services that we provide to the public and indeed in some of the internal working practices that we have.
BT is helping to bring together people and organisations, suppliers and partners through the convergence of communications and IT services.
I'm seeing a great partnership between the two companies in different domains. The first one is the convergence between voice and data, and I'm sure that BT here has the right people and the right technology to provide the right service to Amadeus. And the second one is airport connectivity. As we are, Amadeus, going more and more into this business, I'm seeing BT as a key provider for Amadeus.
BT recognises the security threats faced by businesses and is helping them to protect data and get to grips with new systems and processes on both a global and local level.
Security is one of our prime considerations, being the Ministry of Defence. Therefore, the key has been to pick a supplier that not only understands our business, but also understands security aspects of our business. We had over 19 networks. It was inefficient, it was uneconomic. All the budget was dispersed, all the assets were dispersed. They were aged, no access of new technology whatsoever. And what we did was bring that together under a single contract vehicle called the DFTS. This has delivered economies of scale, a common tariff. It's now interoperable, whereas it wasn't before. And it's delivering real benefits to defence.
Let BT help guide your organisation towards a successful future. BT, more power to you.
I apologise that may have seemed a bit salesy. I deliberately wanted to show it because what it starts to do is help you get into the mindset of our customers, which is what we have to do as we're thinking around the CSR issues. And you will have heard there, each customer is thinking about their own customers and their supply chain and their brand as they're choosing to do business with us. So in terms of the risks that we're looking at for CSR, it's not just our own risks, it's our customers' risks and all the way down that supply chain. So quite an interesting thought. I'm going to be going into more detail to this on one of the streamed sessions on Friday, so if you're particularly interested, then come join me then. Can we move on to the next slide, please? I think we may have got stuck on the video. Okay. What I'd like to move on to next is really just to pick up a couple of reinforcement points that came from, whoops, I've got somebody else's presentation now, I think, that came from David's session earlier. And this was just reflecting on how values are important in a relationship situation and how one of the key fundamentals of getting CSR embedded is to have it represented in your values at core. We have 5 values in BT: trustworthy, helpful, inspiring, straightforward and heart. Now, clearly the trustworthy value is absolutely where the CSR piece fits. And what we've done, and this is relatively new for us, I guess in the last 2 years or so, is split this value down into very specific actions that are represented in the shape of capabilities, as we call them. And these capabilities are the basis on which we recruit, we reward, we appraise people, and we train. So it's absolutely integral to how our people are managed within the business. What I'd like to do next is take you on to a quick view of our CSR strategy and priorities. Now, we actually don't call our CSR strategy as such a strategy. We call it a commitment, and this is it. What we really have here is a very strong driver around taking corporate responsibility beyond the legal requirement, beyond the minimum that we have to do, into a voluntary area. And we see that as critical to do this because this is where we really see ourselves adding value to our stakeholder groups, to future generations, and to our business as a whole. So that's our commitment briefly for you. How that manifests itself is through a set number of priorities. And again, this is starting to bring down, if you like, the overarching strategy into some very hard priorities, which are business priorities. And top of the list there is to mainstream CSR. This is about really embedding it and continually embedding it into the business. I'll come back to this later, but it's important to note at this point, you can't just say you've done it and move on. You have to continue to embed and mainstream CSR into the operation because the operation always changes and there are always new challenges and operations and opportunities coming up. Second on there is to develop CSR commercial opportunities. I'm going to take you into a bit more detail on this later, but it links to the point David Grayson made around thinking beyond CSR risks into corporate social opportunity as being, if you like, the sort of the final stages of the evolution around how you can leverage CSR as a corporate. We on the third point there, really drive hard in terms of improved communications for a better world. We're in the communications business, clearly. What we want to do here as our priority is use our skill set and our know-how as a business to take it into the corporate responsibility area and help other people through that know-how. The fourth one is around international. I mentioned earlier that we're expanding very rapidly in an international space, so clearly this is a key challenge that we have to deal with. We are an established business in the UK, but in growing internationally, this is one of our key focus areas right now. Management of risks continues to be a focus area because those risks are always changing. Community investment is an interesting one. We've always done a lot, but what we're seeing now is a need to be much more focused about how we use our skill set to drive community investment. Marketing and communications of what we do. And finally, accountability. The point came up a couple of times around how transparent activity now is in a globalized world, and as a result of which we need to be very transparent and open around what we do. So those are the priorities that we're working on right now. Next is I'm going to take you into the business benefit and stakeholder views. And to do that, I wanted to just share with you a little quote that came from our chairman, Sir Christopher Bland. He's actually our champion for CSR within the business. And that in itself is one of the key learning points. Have a senior champion to really make this live. He gave us a nice little quote recently. Our CSR program is vital to encourage our customers to buy from us, our investors to put their trust in us, and the best people to work for us. So he very clearly has understood what the key levers are. And he really uses this quote on a very regular basis to a variety of stakeholders to ram home the point. So he's an excellent champion for us on this. Listening to stakeholders is key. We've learnt, I guess, over the last 10 years or so, that this is a really key part of shaping our CSR agenda, and we now do it in a very passionate way and a very committed way. For instance, we have consumer panels, and have had those running since the early 90s. We have a supplier forum, where we ask our suppliers what they expect from us on a CSR sense. We have employee surveys and employee focus groups to ask our people what they see as important. We have a stakeholder advisory panel, and that's a mix of different people from different groups. And finally, we have a report advisory panel, which is specifically asking about what our stakeholders want to see us report on. So not just what we do, but actually what they're interested to hear from us about. Now, in essence, what's come out from those three stakeholder groups, are 5 key things. The first one is that all of them expect us to run our business in a caring and a responsible way. The second point is that they expect us to put something back into society. And the third point is that they look to us to use our own expertise, essentially, in communications to help others communicate better. Use our own know-how to help that. So that's fairly clear-cut, you might say. No great surprises. But what comes when you look at a global business and some of the additional complexities that brings? We use a company called GlobeScan. And GlobeScan have a kind of a monitor around global practices on CSR, and specifically what global stakeholders expect of corporate organizations. And this little map I thought was quite interesting to share with you, because it shows you what different countries expect of organizations and which area of CSR they really expect us to be seen as socially responsible on. And you can see some quite fundamental differences. The two particular ones that I picked out were the interesting differences in Australia, UK, and Canada, who've all got environment top of the list. Whereas in other markets, particularly Europe and the US, the employees come top. So fair treatment of employees coming out as number one. So quite a fundamental difference. And as a global business like ours, when we're building a CSR agenda, it's quite a challenge to think about what works locally versus what works globally. and that's a constantly shifting and changing piece. I just want to share with you one other cut from the GlobeScan report, which is focusing in on community investment and areas where people most want companies to work to improve the local community. This just splits the three main regions of Australia, Europe, and Asia, but again, some quite fundamental differences. There are similarities around education and training, health, poverty, perhaps to be expected. But when you look at environment, arts and culture, there's some quite fundamental differences. So again, when we're as a business thinking around where do we put our time and effort for community investment, we need to listen to our local stakeholders as well as our global stakeholder organisations. GlobeScan, if you want to know any more about that, by the way, have a very good website where you can actually do some further analysis. Now I'm having problems with the slide. Could you move me on, please? The next area I'd like to look at are the business benefits of CSR to BT. And I'm hoping the slide will catch up. What I'd like to do here is just reflect on the clearly articulated, compelling business case that I believe any organisation needs to have worked it out, needs to be able to really articulate it before you stand a chance of embedding CSR. And these are the things that have worked for us. It's this list which has really driven CSR within BT. And it's kind of things that you'd expect, maybe customer satisfaction, employee motivation, investor confidence, operational efficiencies, winning business, risk management, enhanced reputation and brand, better supplier relationships, that's an increasing one, and overall this drives obviously enhanced shareholder value. So quite a big list of things that we have to really use, and also that we have at our disposal to be able to embed the compelling argument. What I'd like to do is just get beneath that in a couple of those areas to try and share with you how we've made that argument come alive. Because I think, certainly from our point of view, we've tried loads of different ways of having good conversations, of getting people engaged. But there's kind of the odd nugget which really works, isn't there, in any conversation like that? And these are our nuggets. So I hope they help you in your own thinking. Can I move on to the next slide, please? The first one I'd like to look at is customer satisfaction and what we've called reputation or license to operate. And hopefully we're just about to come up with this one. I think we've just stepped back one. Okay. If you can click again, please, to populate the whole slide. Okay. Embedding CSR elements into the customer satisfaction measure has meant that we can actually demonstrate in very specific terms how CSR directly drives customer satisfaction. For example, we know that BT CSR performance accounts for over 25% of what we call our image and reputation drivers. So that list on the right-hand side are what we ask our customers about. And the ones in red are the ones that are directly CSR relevant. So if you actually work that back through, it shows that a 10% improvement in the public's perception of our CSR activities equals 1% increase in customer satisfaction. So there is a direct linear relationship. Now that's a very powerful argument to use for managers and leaders, because all of them are targeted and bonused by customer satisfaction. So if you can demonstrate the direct link, you immediately have their attention. What also works very nicely is to turn it around the other way and to say to them, if we actually stopped doing CSR, then customer satisfaction would drop by 10% overnight. So you can actually use it in both ways, in the positive and in the reverse sense, and it really gets their attention. So moving on to the next area that I wanted to take you through is a quick glimpse at our investor view, which is the CSR risk analysis, as we call it. Now, we actually do this and have been doing it for several years, but we've recently changed our way of calculating what a risk looks like into a very simple model which looks at likelihood and impact. So it's very simple to articulate to people who don't have a real financial background. The 7 key risks that we've identified in CSR are the ones that you see listed in that box. Top of that is breach of integrity. Next comes climate change, diversity, geography of jobs, what you might know as offshoring, health and safety, supply chain, and privacy. And I think by the video you can kind of get a feel for why those are some of the key risk areas that we have as a business. But likewise, we have the change that every time we go into a new marketplace, as we expand, as technology changes, so our own risks change. So we actually do this analysis on a regular basis so we can understand what the current and the upcoming risks for the business are. What it also means is that we can engage the board in a very direct discussion around the risks and mitigation strategies. And we successfully do that. We actually take a paper to them for discussion once every 6 months, specifically on the corporate responsibility risks. The next area is operational efficiencies, and I've chosen the environment-based ones here to give you a flavour. We have a system called an environment management system, which we use within BT, that allows us to track and quantify the good environmental efficiencies that we have and what that means operationally to the bottom line. And so far, this is in the last 10 years, we can identify £1.1 billion worth of savings directly from our environmental savings, operational efficiencies. That, in the last 12 months, the proportion of it has been £410 million per annum. Now that's a hefty amount of money, and again that kind of argument really holds sway, not only with your CEO and your board, but with the finance head and really the sort of the cost drivers for the business. Moving on to employee motivation, we recently surveyed our employee base, and 63% of them told us that they felt more proud to work for BT because of our CSR credentials. Now that's an incredibly high proportion. It says to us that we've got the opportunity of actually communicating even further to drive that up, and also maybe changing some of the views of those people that don't see an effect to help their awareness levels go up. But as a retention tool, it shows us also that we've really got a strong and powerful argument to keep the best talent within the business. If you look at the bottom graph, we also surveyed graduates to ask to what extent CSR played a part in their decision to join our business. 30% of them said yes, it did directly. That's actually an increased number over the previous year, where it was in the low 20s. So that says that increasingly our new talent, the leaders of the future, are seeing CSR as a key motivator to join a business. Very important, particularly for the HR teams, to really understand that and understand how they can use CSR as part of their promotional material. And then finally, I'd like to move on to winning new business and brand. Over the last 5 years, we've received a number of externally awarded recognitions around our CSR credentials. A few of them are listed up here. Now, what that has meant in very tangible terms, and this kind of leads on from the Qantas experience we saw earlier, is that we have been able to use and track the value of those credentials in new bids. And over the last year, £2.2 billion worth of bids into BT have had CSR credentials at their core. £2.2 billion worth. So that means that immediately our sales teams are absolutely keen to be able to understand the CSR story so they can share it with potential customers or even existing customers. But it means that we know we've got a real leverage to the bottom line on the positive sense, to new revenue. It's a very powerful story. Moving on now to BT's CSR journey. I mentioned earlier that that we see it very much as a journey. And the reason I said that is that some of the kind of more regulatory or compliance-related issues around CSR are kind of a start point, because that's what you have to do. But moving up the value chain into the voluntary piece and into making it actually a good business benefit is the top end of what I'm calling the CSR journey. We see three main areas of this journey. The first generation is what we've called kind of protectors, which are your minimum requirements, your legal requirements. Second area are the builders, and the final area are the innovators. And when you actually track the value drivers that sit under each of those, you can see what I mean by moving up the value chain. Because at the left-hand end, you've got the risk management value drivers, you've got the operation, the reputation, cost reduction issues coming in. But as you start to move up into the builders around diversity, around community investment, charity support, you get into employee motivation enhancements. And where I'm saying that sort of the final areas is innovators or innovations. This is really where the marketplace innovation opportunity is for the future. And I'd like to just show you a little bit more about what I mean on that. And it's really taking innovation to, or taking CSR into new innovation, new propositions. So not just the building and strengthening relationships, but also up into creating differentiation. So from a commercial angle, to be saying to a customer, a potential customer, influencing them through the relationship to say, well, actually, have you thought about the CSR implications when you've put out your request to tender? You need to think about the fact that a supplier that you choose will impact your brand if they've got human rights issues in their supply chain, because it has repercussions for you. And it actually gets the thinking going of the customer. Clearly, it puts us in a better position because we believe we've got a good story to tell, so we can create differentiation for ourselves in that respect. But moving right up to the top there, the final part of the journey that we see is to be able to generate revenue from that opportunity. And what I mean by that is developing a CSR proposition that fits to our business and which we can actually offer as a product or a service to our customer. And we've got the first example, which is just coming up into our service right now, called Entropy International. Now, this is an environmental management system which we developed ourselves as BT. We developed it in order to manage our own environmental impact. But it runs over an internet-based system, and it's very clearly a product that we can offer to our customers to help them manage their own environmental impact. So, if you like, we're using our own skills and our know-how, coupled with our own service and our own IT networks, to offer to our customers as a revenue-generating model for us. But clearly the win-win is it helps them to do better for the environment in their own sphere. So it's really quite an exciting area, and this is where I guess it's right into the corporate social opportunity that David mentioned in his presentation this morning. So I've motored fairly quickly through the benefits, the journey, and I'd like to now take you into a little bit more detail around action, because at a practitioner's level, my experience is that unless you've got something concrete to really say, this is what CSR is about in our organisation, it remains very soft and fluffy. So I'm going to take you through some examples covering each of those different stakeholder areas, and I hope that one or two of them may resonate with you and help your own thinking in action terms. The first one that I'm going to pick out is really how we embed CSR into BT's DNA, as we've called it. And this is a series of activities that we've undertaken to really make CSR stick. It starts with having a champion at board level, in our case our chairman, It goes on into CSR governance, having a very clear steering and directional level into the divisions. So it's not just about having very senior representation, it's having bite in a division. So for instance, I'm here representing BT today, but my day job, if you like, is actually within our global division. So I'm looking at what Sir Christopher is setting as the overall strategy for the company and bringing it down into very specific terms that make sense for us in a global sense and driving those through into actions. Brand and values we've talked about. Having trustworthy in the brand and values for us really works because it's immediately clear. We also have what we call business principles, the way we work, which is a framework of 12 principles that sit alongside our values and actually shape the way in which our employees, our partners, our suppliers, our contractors, how they should operate to operate ethically. And it's really explicit in terms of what's expected of them. And again, this is something everybody's trained on, they're inducted on it, so it's kind of something that really acts as a very biteable framework for day-to-day business. We monitor and we manage our CSR risks, as I explained to you. We also set objectives and targets for CSR. I'm going to show you right at the end what they look like. There are 12 of them, 12 KPIs. But in any business, I'm sure you've experienced yourself, what gets measured gets done. So actually having those in a very clear, articulated way means that we can drive it home within the business. We also have a program of CSR actions, and I'm going to take you through some of those in a moment. And finally, we have transparency and accountability, which is really making sure that we share with the outside world what we're doing. Now, that's kind of risky on one hand, but the benefit of it is we know that our stakeholders then will come ask us the question. So it's a really good way of keeping the forward focus on what you're doing and making sure that you don't get complacent, you don't sit on your laurels, but you're always thinking about the next thing. So I'm now going to dip into those 5 stakeholder areas, and I'm going to start with integrity, which is the one of the key sort of ethical areas. I mentioned the way we work. These are our business practice areas. We've actually extended this into what we call an ethics performance index. Each of these keys, by the way, are the sort of the key actions that we've done to embed CSR. This index is an awareness index based around the statement of business practice, but it also takes into account a number of other activities where we benchmark ourselves against other organisations. So, for instance, one of the measurable elements in there is the extent to which our leaders talk ethics. The tone at the top. Are they actually espousing and delivering what we say the core business commitment is around this? It really says, do the actions fit the words? So that's really very critical. Another activity under this banner would also be, have we actually dismissed people who have acted unethically? Now that's quite a hard thing to share, isn't it? But in the spirit of openness, we've actually dismissed 132 people in the last year for not acting ethically. And it's a carrot and a stick. You offer the carrot in terms of this is how you're going to be rewarded, this is going to be how you're developed, but actually you need a stick too to make it really work. So we've used our stick. Moving into the customer area of action. We've taken a number of different voluntary steps here. I can't showcase them all, but just to take you through a few examples. A nuisance call bureau, which we operate voluntarily in the UK, costs us £5 million a year. But we do it because we believe it's right, and we know that our customers want it. We offer a telephone to text SMS phone for our hard of hearing customers so that they have the opportunity of actually getting messages straight to text that they can read. And a number of other things that we've done across the business has driven down our customer dissatisfaction by 23%. That was a catch, wasn't it? It's quite an unusual area that we measure dissatisfaction at the moment, because we've actually reached a point where we have highly satisfied customers, so we want to reduce the dissatisfied ones. So it's turned around the other way. So a number of examples there of what we've done in the customer space. Quickly on to employees now. Number of different actions that we've undertaken there. We're very active around flexible part-time working, job sharing, a number of activities that really drive opportunity for our workforce. We've got quite a large number of part-time and home workers. What we also do is operate networks, what we call BT People Networks, for women, ethnic minorities, carers, and other groups within the organisation, both as a sharing and a learning and a support activity for those people, but importantly, as a key stakeholder group that we can actually work with to help us develop either new policies and practices or new products and services. So if we want to understand what the key challenges are for disabled employees, our disabled network is a great source of expertise. So we go talk to them, they can help shape where we go in the company. Suppliers, we have a number of activities. I'm just going to pick out a couple in the interest of time here. We spend about £4 billion per annum on supplies, so we know that we have quite an impact on the economy. If I pick out the ethical procurement, we've devised what we call an ethical procurement framework, which is a really core set of minimum principles and criteria that we ask our suppliers and partners to sign up to, and we won't work with them unless they sign up to that. But we just don't let it rest at that. We actually go check, we do risk analysis with our suppliers, and we go health check them to make sure that we're really happy with what we have. The final point there of diversity programme, we actually work deliberately with a number of minority business enterprises. So that may be women-owned or small organisations around the world, so that we're getting diversity into our supply chain, not just diversity in the context of our workforce, but our supply chain too. Moving into environment now, the key activity that we've really undertaken here, and it's a big hitter, took a lot of time to get into place, but it's really paying dividends, is that we've signed up this year the world's largest green energy contract. And that is a world's first. What that means is that all of our exchanges, 6,500 exchanges, our offices, our depots, all of our network in the UK runs on renewable energy, solar, hydroelectric, wind-powered. And that is literally the world's largest renewable energy contract. Now that sent out a huge statement, both to internally to the employees within our business, but also to our other stakeholders, that we are serious about this. We also very nicely had a recognition from the Prime Minister, so clearly it actually helps our brand, it helps our reputation, and it ticks all those other boxes that are absolutely key. In the community space, we spend around about £20 million a year on different community activities. Just to pick out a couple here, Childline is one of our key focus areas in the UK. It's operating a helpline, telephone helpline, for needy children, either if they've been abused or bullied or they have particular requirements. We provide that service in the shape of BT volunteers, which is absolutely key. Second point quickly is that we use our communication skills in some of the emergency disasters around the world. So Pakistan most recently, we've actually both organised a telethon which has raised in the region of £30 million by using BT's telephone system to take donations, but we've also sent out satellite team hit squads to regions. So we've actually put in very quick and dirty but very needy satellite telephone equipment. So that's what I meant earlier about using our core skill set to help needy communities. I know I'm getting the timeout sign here, but very quickly, digital inclusion is the space of the future. This is about helping communities to connect to the digital age. And the bottom photograph there is an example in India where we're sponsoring a school to help children, 2,000 children in the slum area of Delhi, to have ICT training, which helps clearly their own education, helps make them more sustainable, but helps their community meet greater sustainability over the longer term. Reporting and measures, I'm kind of not going to have time to talk about, but just to say that there are 12 different KPIs that we have. These are they. if you'd like to read in more detail about them, there's a Better World website that I'll show you in a second, which is where you can read in more detail. Critical success factors. These are really an amalgam of the points that we've been talking through in the rest of the presentation. But I think certainly in terms of the lessons learned, this can help you, I think, shortcut some of the experiences we've had in the last 10 years, and hopefully will allow you to really pick out the nuggets that from a corporate point of view really help to embed CSR. Finally, the website, if you'd like to know more, it's bt.com/betterworld. We actually, this is the sort of external public face of CSR, our annual report, and you can download a quick highlight summary of about 12 pages that just take you through some of the core stuff that I've been talking about today. You've also got the opportunity of reading about some hot topics. We do white papers in terms of what the core topics are for the industry that you can download and have a read. So that really completes my presentation. Thanks for staying with me. I know there was a lot of information there, but I think we now have a few minutes for questions if anyone would like to raise any. There's just one down the front and at the far side.
Just a quick question. I noticed on one of your slides something that's quite interesting from a CSR point of view, that you actually said, unless I read it incorrectly, that it also can increase shareholder value. Is that an actual direct dollar figure, and has anybody ever looked at tracking the implementation of CSR strategies for BT and share price?
It's a very interesting question, and the honest answer is no, we haven't yet, because it's such a complex variable to be able to trace directly. What we've done is really looked at the key drivers of stakeholder value, which were all of the ones in that list that I shared with you of the benefits, and we've been able to quantify those directly as drivers. But what we haven't been able to do yet is say which of those are the most important for overall shareholder value. The additional conundrum we have clearly is that shareholder value changes over time in terms of what the key drivers are. So it would at best be a snapshot of a particular moment. In our industry, it changes so fast. You know, next month it could be something different. At the far side there.
Janet, thanks very much. You pointed out in one of your slides that you'd been able to develop out of your own systems product in the CSR realm, as it were, that you passed on to others. I'm interested to know whether your own CSR practice had in fact created core products and services which were then able to deliver back to the company a repertoire that was, well, of direct value to the customers, whether it impacted upon your core services and products.
Well, it's interesting. If I think about that particular example, the Entropy International, that's a relatively new product. We've just, obviously, we've been using internally ourselves for some time, but we haven't really launched it long enough to know what the revenue payback is. But I think about sort of other areas that we've started to make an impact. Our core business, I guess, is around helping businesses transform into using things like agile working. So using sort of webcasting, live link, and sort of audio conferencing as a way of reducing transport cost, CO2 emissions from their own fleet, these types of things. What we have been able to do is translate that of what that means in BT terms for our own workforce. So I think I can remember the figures correctly. If we look at the BT workforce, 66% of our workforce use audio conferencing, video conferencing on a regular basis, and their average travel time, if they were going to a meeting, would be around about 91 miles. So for each call, they are saving 91 miles. And if you work that through on the basis of CO2 emissions, it worked out as 26,000 tonnes of CO2 emission per year that is saved. And that's just in our organisation. So we can offer that as a case study, if you like, to other organisations to help them understand what they can make as savings. Just at the back here.
Janet, Ian Dunlop. You've mentioned ethics right through your presentation from the board down. How well are ethical considerations really embedded in the organisation right the way through the structure, and how easy was that to achieve over time?
Okay, it's a great question, because I guess in anything like this, you can only answer on the basis of what you see. And what you see are the 132 people that we've identified who didn't act ethically that we've removed. I think realistically, if I look at our business as a whole, our most established business area is the UK, and I think ethically we've got a very solid framework in place. If I look outside the UK, we're expanding very rapidly. We've got it embedded in terms of how our new people operate, how our suppliers operate, and how our partners operate. But all the time, we're buying up new businesses. We're operating with new strategic partners in what I would class as high-risk countries, sort of Africa, China, who perhaps have more corruption risks than Europe, for instance. So we constantly have to reevaluate how successfully we've embedded it or not. And it's one of my biggest challenges, if I'm honest, in a global space, to really try and identify how well we're doing that or not. What we have done, to give you an example of one of the sort of mitigation strategies, I guess, is that we've recently launched an at-risk countries website, which allows our managers and our sales guys to have a really quick view of what countries' risk is like on an ethical basis, and in particular any hot areas that they need to be thinking about as they're doing business in that country. And where I'm trying to get to at the moment is to embed that in the business case cycle, so that before we actually do a deal, we're fully evaluating the risks, we're looking at the ethical issues around it before we decide whether we're going to do business there or not. But it's a big, it's a long-term project, and it's one you constantly have to really focus on. Yeah. One more question I'm being advised you've got time for. Otherwise, we'll go early to tea, I guess. Oh, one down here.
Hi, it's just a quick question. Do you link CSR indicators like those KPIs and those sorts of things to senior management and remuneration and those sorts of things? Are you that far embedded in the organisation now?
That's a great question, because that's ultimately where it hits the road, isn't it? The answer is we do on some areas, but we don't on all. So if I take customer satisfaction, for instance, our senior leaders are rewarded on customer satisfaction, so that's absolutely a direct link. Clearly they are in terms of operational efficiencies around bottom line savings and this type of area. What we don't have at the moment, and that we're working very hard on, is how we embed some of the other areas, like the environmental efficiencies, like the ethics piece, directly into senior leader objectives. It's a constant challenge, because some of them are easier to do than others, and it's always something you need to look at and really sort of identify which ones you can get in as quick early wins, which ones take a little bit extra time. So we're in the extra time at the moment. But it's an incredibly difficult area, but one that really is where we need to go. Okay. All right. Thanks very much indeed.
Well done.